But this has taken far, far too long. It is unacceptable that an officer who goes out to face danger on behalf of the public has his life put on hold for that period of time, as well as the extraordinary pressure and stress that puts on his family. It's equally unfair for a family that's lost a loved one, such as the Kaba family, to have to wait that long for the conclusion of a case. The professionalism of our firearms officers is extraordinary. We're running 4,000 firearms operations a year in London to protect communities. They do it with such care and professionalism. We're only firing shots on 1 or 2 occasions. By any metric, we're the most careful and professional in the world. The points raised by this case about the broken police accountability system are the tip of an iceberg that don't just affect firearms officers, they affect every officer going out day in and day out to protect the public. It is unacceptable that if you're prepared to run towards danger, confronting the most dangerous and sometimes murderous criminals, doing your job protecting the public, that you should have your life turned upside down for years and years of unacceptable scrutiny in a process that should take weeks, not years. There are perverse consequences of this regime, and let me give you some examples. An officer can face investigation when they are simply pursuing a criminal and the criminal crashes their car, injuring themselves or somebody else. It's crazy that can lead to the investigation for the officer doing the pursuit. An officer who arrests a drug supplier who, unbeknownst to them, has swallowed the drugs to hide them and of course subsequently falls ill, can lead to the officer being investigated. An officer who's arrested somebody suspected of sharing paedophile images, who bails them while inquiries continue examining computers, that officer can be investigated simply because that suspect chose to subsequently, after he'd gone home, take his own life. This and many other examples add together and create a hesitance and a caution in the minds of police officers. Police officers who, I'll be absolutely clear, they'll run towards the most extraordinary dangers, they will put themselves in the most extraordinary physical jeopardy, that they're intimidated and sometimes cautious because of the unreasonable legal jeopardy this system creates. It's for that reason the fundamental end-to-end review of the police misconduct and accountability system that was announced by the Home Office last week is long overdue and very welcome. If that can report speedily and bring some common sense to the accountability of police officers, it can help our fantastic men and women do a better, more confident job day in and day out protecting the communities of London. Thank you. I'll take 2 or 3 questions.
Commissioner, BBC News. What are the plans for Sergeant Blake to return to work?
So I'm not going to discuss his personal details. We've been supporting on his return to work, and he just wants to get on and do his job as a police officer.
GB News here. What damage has this whole process done to firearms officers and their ability to confidently do their job?
This process has really shaken firearms officers, and the jeopardy these officers face is one of the factors that makes it a challenge for us to recruit firearms officers. But the changes that have so far been made to the accountability system, we've started to make progress. They really celebrate that. And if this end-to-end review can improve the system further, that will be very welcome.
Chris Kaba's family still feel like they haven't had justice, and this misconduct hearing could have been considered their last chance to get it. What would your message to them be today?
Regardless of the merits of a case, we can all have sympathy for someone who have lost a loved one in a moment of confrontation with police. I can only have sympathy for them regardless of this case. Last question.
Why should the rules of police accountability change if public trust in police is so low?
I think everybody wants police officers to be confident confronting danger to protect them. We all need that in our most difficult moments. Of course, the system should look at police use of force. It needs to do it speedily and fairly so that officers have confidence to act in a way that sometimes it's reduced. It's a powerful parallel with the effect of a case like the PC Harper case, which has been in the media. That has a chilling effect on the confidence of police officers when they see a justice system that's not prepared to support their bravery. Thank you very much.
Well, that there, Mark Rowley, the Chief of the Metropolitan Police, the Chief Commissioner, they're talking about the Chris Kaba case, but much more widely talking about the pressures that police officers face in the line of duty, especially those armed. Let's bring in our home editor, Jason Farrell. Really interesting listening to him there, talking about how long this has taken. It's taken 4 years to get to this point. The stress on the officer and his family, and also on Chris Kaba's family, for this to be resolved, saying that this is something that should have been resolved in weeks, and calling for real wholesale change of the review of the way that police are held accountable for their actions when on duty.
Yeah, let me start with a plug, actually. We've just made a documentary with the firearms unit, MO19. I've spent time with these police officers. I've also been speaking extensively with the campaigners and the activists around the Kaba family. So I see it from both sides. And all of them would agree on one thing, and that is that this process takes too long. As you just heard, really laid out there by the Commissioner. 4 years for this to get to this point. That officer has not been able to work. The family's been left in limbo as well. I've seen cases that have lasted for 10 years. And it was actually a 10-year case, the case of W80, who shot a man in a vehicle, that led to the initial change around misconduct hearings. So what a group of Supreme Court judges decided was that misconduct hearings should have a different level of accountability to a criminal case. So, for example, if there was a use of force, normally your defence would be, in a criminal case, you'd say, I had an honestly held belief that there was a threat to life. And you could use that defence, I could use that defence, police officers use it as well. They're much more likely to be in a situation where they have to use force to protect. So they are more likely to end up in these scenarios. But in a misconduct hearing, that use of force has an extra level of proof. It has to be reasonable. And it's just that slight nuance and slight additional level of proof that they have to produce. Now, the families say, of course, it should be reasonable. And the Supreme Court judges decided reasonableness was important because how else would the police learn the reasonableness of mistakes? But what the Home Office have come out and said, no, actually, do you know what? In high-pressure situations, sometimes it's not fair to judge the actions of a police officer around that because they could have made a mistake. But even so, they made that mistake with the knowledge that they had in that moment under extreme pressure. So we've got to this stage now where the misconduct hearings there's a lower level of proof. It's going to cause real anxiety for the family. They're going to be really upset about this. They will come out and they'll no doubt say that this is the wrong decision and that NX121 should have faced this misconduct hearing. But he has already faced a criminal trial and he has been cleared of murder. And the police will say he's been through enough. He should be allowed to get back to his job.
And in terms of the review, Home Office review, he said this is long overdue and very welcome. We need to bring some common sense to the accountability of police officers. When are we going to get some kind of clarity on that, do we think?
Well, I think this is obviously, let's just bring it back to this case for a moment. This is specific to the shooting of Chris Kaba. It happened in September 2022, and he was shot by NX121 as he was surrounded by vehicles. But what you heard there from the Commissioner was very much saying that with a much broader assessment of lots of other, not just involving firearms officers, but, for example, police vehicles in a chase. So he's essentially saying, or someone investigating a paedophile and getting into trouble if the paedophile takes their own life. All of those things are other aspects that the police have been concerned about for some time around the misconduct. And that is under review. The Home Office is looking at whether there needs to be changes around that. This is the most significant one, though, because this is really about life or death decisions made by police officers in split seconds.
While you've been talking, we've had a statement, as probably would expect, from the Justice for Chris Kaba campaign. They say they're appalled by the IOPC's decision to abandon disciplinary proceedings. It's a devastating blow, not just to Chris Kaba's family, but to everyone who cares about living in a society where the police are not above the law. The extraordinary treatment of the police officer throughout this case sends a dangerous message that when police kill, the system will bend over backwards to protect police officers rather than hold them accountable and deliver justice. The IOPC had a choice today. It chose not to do the right thing. The decision is deeply damaging to public confidence in its independence and willingness to hold police officers to account. They say they will continue to fight for a kind of society that we want to live in. I mean, this is a view that obviously Mark Rowley would contest. Yes,
and I think the officers that I've spent time with echo this point, that they work in very high pressure situations, that when they attend a job and they're armed with a weapon, they do have to make these split-second decisions. And the officers that I spoke to were saying, I could go to prison for the highest offence in the land for simply doing my job. And there was a situation where a lot of police officers were saying, well, I'm not going to carry guns anymore, when Martin Blake was first charged with murder. And I think especially when he was named, that sent another shockwave through the system, because police officers were saying, well, that puts his family at risk. There are people out there who might want to take revenge on Martin Blake. Often we're dealing with extremely dangerous criminals. If officers are named when they've shot somebody, that sends out a really poor signal to the police about how well protected they're going to be if they face the criminal justice system. So there were a lot of concerns around the Chris Kaba case and the way in which it was handled by police officers. But on the other hand, as one of the campaigners said to me, when all the officers laid down their arms, when Martin Blake was charged with murder, that was before any of the evidence had come to light. So their argument was, well, shouldn't we have an accountability process? Shouldn't we see where this takes us before police officers decide whether or not they should put down their arms? You have to say it's quite compelling arguments on both sides. Yeah. And we must have an accountability system where the police do learn from their mistakes and police officers are held accountable when they make bad decisions. But they also need to have the confidence to go out there and do their job. It's a very, very nuanced and difficult
and it's going to be a really interesting
situation to find the balance right on.
Yeah, Jason, thank you very much.